seeker, because I think I had some doubt about the level of my sincerity, so the only way I could remove that doubt was to become kind of crazed and prove to myself and everyone that no, I'm a sincere seeker. That's my thinking now, that there was something a little bit off base with how I was approaching things. It may have been due to some insecurity. So I put all my cards in the basket of meditation. I'd given up pretty much everything else. I loved Hatha Yoga also, but meditation was what I thought was my ticket home. And one time, Gurudev came and gave a talk at our center, and afterwards, he was sitting in our little living room, waiting for the car to come and get him. And I was sitting, he was on a couch, and I was sitting on the floor in front of him, and he was looking around the room a bit, and then what I was concerned what happened, he kind of zoomed in on me. And he just rests his being in me. And then he says the thing that maybe if someone was going to tell me something that I didn't want to hear, he just kind of got that and said it. He said, you know, God's not interested in your meditation. It was like someone just put a pin in a balloon. I put everything in that. What else am I doing? Meditation is what I'm hoping is going to save me. So I don't know if it's like to be like one-on-one with him, like in a confined space. It's like, it's really intense. I didn't have like pulling his beard thing experience so much, so he was always Gurudev, you know. Even after I became president of the ashram, I would call him regularly, no, he was Gurudev. So I said, okay, what's God interested in? He said, well, where do you think God is? And I'm like, so demoralized. I think I actually said something, look, I can't have a philosophical discussion with you now. I'm really... Hey, bitch, thank you. But he really wanted to probe this thing. He wasn't going to let me off the hook. I said, I don't know. You know, God is everywhere. He's in all these names and forms. And he wants you to be of service to the names and forms. To himself in the names and forms. And I never, particularly at that point, but I wasn't naturally inclined toward karma yoga. An introverted person, probably some social phobias, a little inept in the public. So karma yoga, you pay your dues, you do some karma yoga, but then you do the real thing, you meditate. So I really wasn't trying to be a smart aleck or anything. So, but this is what I was feeling. I said, sir, you know, my service to the names and forms is I take my mala beads, I go into a corner, I repeat my mantra, and I don't bother people. That's how I can serve them. I was just trying to be honest about my state of mind. And he looked so happy with that answer, because he knew he could jump on me. He was like waiting for me to say that. I definitely saw, you know, in a few months I was being played, and I needed to really stay alert, because he was definitely running the show. He said, no, that's not what's happening. You're not so worried about disturbing other people. You're not that kind-hearted and selfless to be that worried about that. You're afraid of getting disturbed. Let's call it as it is. And again, the ring of truth, I knew that exactly the truth, that the world is a disturbing place, and particularly in my state of mind, I was always in some kind of turmoil. So he said, you know what your meditation is? When you go to a public bathroom, you've probably heard them say this, just check around. See if at least you left any hair in the sink. Did you leave any hair in the sink? And then see if anyone else left anything that could be cleaned up. And I still do that, and I still really check for the hair. My hair does sometimes come onto the sink, and that's my meditation when I'm combing my hair. And he said, you know how the Japanese, they made a whole meditative ritual out of just having tea. Made a ceremony out of tea. I want you to think of that. You don't have to move that slowly, but I want you to think of that as you are moving about in the world. Because I had this kind of nervous way of doing things. I didn't give up my meditation practice, and I don't think that was the message. But, so what's the moral of the story?
Service.
As a meditation on ego transformation. And again, maybe don't be so attached to what you think is the way. In a short time, I was in charge of our Connecticut Center. I was probably still like 20 years old at the time. I never signed up for that. I thought all these older disciples would be guiding me. I'd be with this mature group of Sangha members, and everyone's coming to me about how to meditate, all their Hatha Yoga questions, how to take enemas. And I'm cleaning the bathroom, I'm teaching all the classes. I don't know if you ever ran a small center, you're basically it. He's still here. He runs a Swindon Center, he's it, he runs that center. So I thought, I don't think this is the right thing for me. If I go back to school, I can have my own room. I can do my sadhana. I can quietly, kind of disappear and not be the leader. So I looked into that, and I dropped out of college, but I still had some college credit, and I made University of Santa Barbara, and they had a school in physical therapy. I said, oh, that's perfect. California, physical therapy, ties in with yoga. My dad was in bliss, he paid for the whole thing. I finally came to my senses. Going back to college, maybe I'll find a girl, and he was so happy. So I went to Swami Asokananda, because he had been encouraging people at that time. I don't know with you, but he had been encouraging people. He says, you guys, you have no skills. How can you be served people? Gain some skills, go back to school, gain some skills, and then be of service. So he had been encouraging, and some of my friends decided to not be whole-time members and go back to school. So I said, I'm going to go back to college. Maybe I'll become a physical therapist. Oh, he looked at me. We were standing like in a hallway, and he looked at me and said, all those degrees after your name are just going to add to your temperature. I was surprised. I said, oh, you don't think I should go back? I'd already been approved and everything. So he started telling me the story. It was one of the most nerve-wracking times I ever had with him because I didn't understand the story. I couldn't understand what he was trying to say through the story. And I've heard the story many times since then, but it was the first time I'd heard it then, so I didn't catch his drift. So he said there was a great sage who was teaching all these learned people the science of yoga. And the sage said, tonight I'm gonna go to the higher realm. I've done my duty here. My last breath is going to be coming soon. It's time for me to go. And I've developed certain cities, I have certain powers, so I can take someone with me. Who's going to come? And nobody, everyone kind of looks down. He says, Purusha, what about you? Sir, I'm just finishing off this last commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. I really won't feel I lived my life fully unless I finish this. Okay, what about you? My daughter still isn't married yet. Let me just wait till she's married. Everyone had some excuse. And then from the back of the room, there's this little voice, mumbling voice. You know the story? Yeah. You know it? Yeah. And so when Guru's telling me the story, he says what the voice, it's a little boy's voice, and he tells me what the voice says in Tamil first. So I don't know what that means. So the Guru calls the boy forward and say that again in front of everybody. And Guru says it in Tamil, what the boy says, and then he translated it as, Sir, if I go, I may go. And he stops there, and I'm waiting for the next part of the story. And he sees I'm waiting. He says, if I go, I may go. Is that it? He's kind of getting irritated. If I go, I may go. I don't know what you're saying. Please tell me, what does it mean? And then he had just one word, and that kind of made sense. If the I goes, then you may go. Oh. The boy understood that. If the I goes, then you can go. You don't need college degrees for that. You need the ego to go if you want to go. So, as you might imagine, I didn't go to college. A few times I had my foot slightly out the door, but I'd always would check with him. Luckily, I always had that intelligence, and he always kind of nudged me back until a certain point. And then, okay, now you decide. You're free to go, free to come, free to go. But I liked that. He knew when, no, he needed encouragement to hang around. What's the moral of that story? Or the lesson? Nothing?
Sometimes other people can see in you what you can't see in yourself.
Okay, we have our own blind spots. Typically people have better inner vision, they might be able to see through those blind spots. That's a good lesson. And if you have enough trust in them, it helps. Because if you don't see it as a blind spot, then you think, oh, what are they talking about?
Diplomas and certificates do not a yogi make.
Yes. Yes. You don't have to be that learned to have a pure heart.
It seems like maybe you were observing the moon instead of the sun again.
Very, very good insight. I mean, what was motivating? I'll be with you. But what was motivating me to leave was not the sun, right? So I was caught in the moon, and then I already went so far. My dad is in Bliss. I have the applications filled approved for the school. So that's all following without checking with the moon, sun first. You know? Yes, ma'am.
Just saying, it feels like there's a theme. Each story told.
Yeah, there could be a theme here.
You surrendering your ego because it's your ego that wants you to make your dad happy and do something that you think is constructive when he knows that you need to surrender your ego first.
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't. I didn't care about my dad's happiness that much. I could have said I'm not that kind of person, but I'm by myself or I'm not in charge. That was really appealing to me. You figure out how to take it on your own. I am finished with that. So it was a small center in Connecticut, and it ended up just me and one other person were living there. You might know her, a woman named Bharti. She ended up being in charge of the garden at the ashram. Did you ever meet her?
Bharti.
Gardena, yeah.
I know her very well.
Okay, good. We hated each other. Sometimes, I mentioned this at the initiation today, sometimes the Sangha is there for you to really do some rubbing and scrubbing. It was the most intense. I was such a crude rock. She was also pretty crude. We're best of friends now, and then we're talking about, almost 40 years ago. And then we just didn't know how to live together. It was so uncomfortable. I mean, every day was so painful. To wake up and look at that face. And I could tell from her expression, she was looking at mine the same way. And again, one time, Gurudev came, and he just looked at the two of us. He shook his head. And he said, you guys can be together for 12 years. That's a cycle. You have to be together for 12 years. So you better work it out. We never spoke to him about a relationship. He just looked and could see. So we couldn't believe it. I mean, 12 hours. 12 years is it. He was putting me in solitary confinement. So we sat down and we had a real talk. I think that night and the next day. We said, this is killing us both. We got to find a way to make this work. And we talked about what the issues were between us. We really had an amazing dialogue. I wasn't really good at it in those days, but somehow I knew I had to just stop and listen and then express myself honestly and all the pain I was going through and listen to her pain. And we really connected, and things shifted dramatically after that. Still the incidents came up, but we worked through them. And it became, I would say, a pleasure to be there. So in 6 months, Gurudev pulled me out. I was ready for my 12 years, totally ready. The Guru said that. Guru, words out of the Guru's mouth. He said 12 years. I accepted that's what it was going to be. Once I accepted it and worked it out, 6 months was all I had to do. What's the moral of the story?
When we accept things, then we're removed from that situation.
If you don't resist your karma, if you really find what's the lesson in this challenge, you may be able to quickly finish it off. Otherwise, if you finish it off, it's only temporary. You got to go back to it. A very similar situation again. We've all had that, right? Where you think something's over, and oh, there it is in another year or so. Same type of situation. So yeah, face it, deal with it, understand what it is that's happening here, and it could shift quickly. I've really learned. I used to kind of, if something was uncomfortable, I'd jump out. My parents got divorced and they jumped out, and I kind of learned that, okay, it's uncomfortable, get out. But I really learned this was, no, it's uncomfortable, hang in there. Almost the exact opposite, hang in there, it's uncomfortable. If it's easy, then you can leave. If it's uncomfortable, don't look for an escape hatch. You try to see what's going on here. That became one of the main lessons in my life. Hang in there through the different challenges. You're going to have to face those challenges. Face them and don't be afraid of them. They're actually blessings. We call them challenges or difficulties or even tragedies. They're mostly blessings, if not all blessings. So in 1973, Gurudev started this pre-sannyas order, and he gave suggestions about who could take pre-sannyas. Then it was called Brahmachari Diksha. The Sanskrit name is Brahmachari Diksha. And I took it. You took it at that time. I think, we're out of 28 people who took sannyas in 1975. We're 2 of them that are left. So only 7 are left from that original group of 28.
2/7.
Right.
I said 2/7.
2/7. Yeah, original group of 7, yeah. So, and then in 75, I took sannyas initiation. So I given the first sannyas initiation was 1975, and it was such a great moment. And I'm sure Mataji remembers this. We sat down with Gurudev. We're so excited. Excited not the word. We're in an altered state of consciousness. Our heads are shaved, and we renounced the world. And we don't know what's happening next, but we have so much faith in our Guru, and it was such an uplifting time. And he said, whatever you're feeling now, keep in mind that there are going to be challenges along the way. Write down why you made this decision, what you hope to achieve from this, and what you're giving up to achieve this. And regularly look at that. Do you remember he said that to us? Do you remember?
Yes, I totally remember that.
Yeah. So I did that. That night, I wrote it down, and I put it to a James Taylor song. And I said, okay, I need to say this every day. So how could I do this? So I decided I would sing it in the shower every day, my sannyas intention. And over the decades, I slightly tweaked it. It's basically the same that I wrote that night. But I want every word to resonate with my heart. So I've maybe slightly tweaked it over the decades, but it's been so helpful to do that every day. There's a reason that only 7 are left. I mean, those people who left, not that they're not still great spiritual people, but that wasn't their path. And they're considered wonderful members of our Sangha. They're not some groups you can't just leave sannyas and just be, you should leave, Gurudev was never like that. But, and I saw myself, and I think I'm not being humble now. I think an accurate assessment is that there were some great beings there. I I mean, I was so impressed with the quality of the people there, and kind of in awe of some of them. And I think, you know, the thing about me was that I plug away at something. I don't have like this natural thing, but I'll plug away at it. And I like the fact that I understood what was necessary. Just keep clear about what you're doing every day. Remind yourself of that clarity. And if you go a little bit off track, just remember why you're here. So that was one, and I've heard him say that to couples before they get married. Why this person? In a few years, you may start to wonder why I married this person. How come they chew with their mouth open like that? Whatever it is, it starts niggling at you. You start thinking, oh, look at that other person, they're so wonderful. Why did I get stuck in this situation? It happens in any type of commitment like that. So what's the moral of the story?
Don't underestimate yourself.
Don't underestimate yourself. That's a good one.
Seeing challenges as opportunities to grow.
Say it again?
Seeing challenges as opportunities to grow. Personal growth.
Definitely.
Staying true to your path, I'd say.
But the idea is that when you decide something, everything is clear. You know, you're not doubting it, but it's going to be later that you need to maintain that clarity. Mm-hmm. And you should know at that moment, that first moment, that clarity is not always going to be there. So what are you going to do about that, is the question. The mind is a fickle thing, it's going to waver. What are you going to do? Is this something that could come and go, change, or is it something that, no, you're making a real samkalpa, commitment to? If it's not a commitment, then okay, you'll change your mind later, you'll do something different. There are certain things you say, no, I'm not going to do that. This is a decision. When we take sannyas, it doesn't say lifelong decision. It says, this is my eternal commitment. I will never revoke it. That's in the sannyas vow. This is my eternal commitment. I will never revoke it. So if I say something like that, I don't want to think, oh yeah, but let's say what happens in a few years, who knows? No. So therefore, at that moment, when I make that commitment, I should know in a few years, I may not have the same zeal. I should plan on that. Or zeal's going to ebb and flow, you know, that's how it is. Spiritual life, it doesn't always stay the same. So, think about how you're going to keep steady with your highest goals. Let's see, 15 more minutes. I started late, maybe I might go to close to 6.
That's the sacred music, of course.
Here?
No, in the library.
Okay, so, okay.
And the meditation.
Yeah, so sacred music is quarter 6. If I go a little bit over, you can quietly go and just leave. But I'll be aware. And I probably have enough for another 2 hours, so this is probably one I hesitate to tell, but I'm going to tell it. Because I think it's good for you to see that doubt does come up in the mind, and we have to deal with this. So after 6 months, he says, come to the ashram. Then the ashram is in Connecticut. And I did a little of everything there, but I got on a maintenance crew, which is kind of odd because I was, you know, now I'm like 100 and 28 pounds, then I weighed 104 pounds. They actually diagnosed me from malnutrition, and I had to get like a high iron diet and things. I just thought that one of the ways I could prove that I was sincere was by suppressing the one thing I loved the most, which was eating. So it was obvious that eating was an evil thing because it was too enjoyable. So I just would stop eating and then binge like crazy. So I was at the ashram, and it was odd that I was in this maintenance crew because I was a really skinny guy, and all these maintenance crew was like Hanuman type guys. And so one day I was on a project. I didn't quite understand the project, but Gurudev had a pond behind his house, and I was supposed to I guess the mud was seeping into the pond, and the way I understood it was I was supposed to get rocks and shore up the pond to firm up the edges of the pond. So I'm by myself. For some reason that day I was by myself. For some reason it means get planned, something terrible is going to happen. So I'm gathering stones, I'm putting them in, and then all of a sudden Gurudev comes out on his porch. He's watching me for a while. I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing. No one gave me clear instruction about this project. And then he says, so why don't you go out there and do something? And I don't know what he's talking about. I don't remember exact words, but then it took me a few moments to recognize he was being sarcastic. So I guess I wasn't doing the project right. So I tried to do what I thought he was saying and do what I thought I should be doing, and I was really not knowing what should happen. And he finally said, go away, go home. So I started to cry. And I said, okay, I'm going, but I'm coming back tomorrow. I was like defiant. I'm going to come back tomorrow. You can't intimidate me this way. And that night was one of the hardest nights of my life. I'm starting to think, well, what if he's just a mean old man? And I become reminded, I'm not going to be that mean. I'm going to be a nice. He's mean. And so I'm going to be enlightened and be that mean. And I'm wrestling with this, it's 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I'm not even close to sleeping. I don't know if I slept that night at all, but somehow toward the wee hours of the morning, it dawned on me, like just a switch flipped and said, that's what the guru does. That's their job. He might be a mean person, but he's doing his job. And somehow I got it. At least that's how I decided to interpret it. So I show up the next day. This time the full crew was there. The maintenance crew was there. I show up the next day full of vigor. And so there's this huge rock that they're trying to move. And they're looking for a lever to help move the rock. And I look at the rock, and I think I'm in my sun at the time, not my moon. I say, we can move this rock. Forget about the lever. And I just start pushing it. I'm 104 pounds. I'm basically bones and a little skin. I'm pushing this rock, and it starts to move the rock.
Wow.
Can you imagine like 5 or 6 guys like Hanuman there wondering how they can move the rock? And Guru said, look at this guy. What a dynamo. He saw that I worked through all that. I could see the way we were connected. I could see he saw what I went through that night. He saw how I came that day. And he wanted to make sure that I knew he saw that. This guy's a dynamo. You guys are all figuring out. He's moving the rock. What a great soul this Asokananda is. What's the lesson of the story?
Go to doubts.
Go to
You doubts.
doubts. Go through your doubts. Yeah, work through your doubts. Don't hold on to them. Work through your doubts. Particularly if it's about something you really want to have shraddha in, some faith in, then you better make sure you address your doubts.
Trust your guru no matter how much you want to make him wrong.
You gotta trust the guru. I don't think I ever experienced anything. You know, I would get irritated by him. I had different things, but never anything like that ever happened again. That was it. He was mean to me after that. But I almost missed it when he wasn't mean to me. He's polite, he's nice to the people who are on the periphery. But if you're really one of his, no, he's not there to be polite to you. That's not his job. He's there to let it come up and then...
To build up your strength.
What's that?
Isn't that it? He's trying to build up your strength.
Exactly.
Up here.
Exactly.
And commitment.
And commitment, yeah.
And also purify the ego.
Exactly. Let's see. What should I skip here? This is one I think I have to tell. So I took sannyas in 75, and shortly after that, I came back to New York. And there was a great Swami who was in charge of our New York center, named Swami Vivekananda. First of all, I was brother Vivekan. So when we took sannyas initiation, I couldn't believe he got my name. I was supposed to be Swami Vivekananda. Asokananda, I never heard of this word before. What's that mean? I'm brother Vivekan. Well, how come not Vivekananda, the great Swami Vivekananda? So there was a little of that going on. Finally, I did learn to, I'm a little bit of the nervous type. Ashoka means free from worry, anxiety. Ashoka, free from. So it's the perfect name for me, and I love it. But at that time, I felt I was robbed. But I became good friends with Swami Vivekananda. But he was a really, he was a very charismatic man, very capable leader. He could do all different types of things, maintenance work, bookkeeping. He was good at everything, and the girls loved him. Handsome man, the girls went crazy over him. And I'm just this kind of skinny Swami Asokananda. No one's paying much attention to me. I wouldn't either. So I have to say, there was some jealousy there that, he gets all the juice. What about me? But now I'm a Swami, I think, wow, a Swami thinks this way. See what kind of Swami you are. And I think the second reaction, worse than the first, my first samskara was to feel jealousy and envy. But the second samskara was to feel totally unworthy because of that first samskara. And I think the second samskara was the worst one. Okay, you have these impressions, they're kind of human things. But no, I didn't do that. I felt so, I betrayed sannyasa order, I wasn't worthy of it. So they really aided me, these feelings. Plus he was my friend, I really liked him. So one day the New York I went to the Connecticut ashram, and there was a big field, something like this field here, in the back of the ashram. And Gurudev's there, but a lot of people are gathered around Swami Vivekananda, and he's kind of holding court there. And no one's with Swami Asokananda. And I look, and these things come up again. Only now I see Gurudev there. Oh, my Guru here. Look at what I'm thinking. What kind of Swami are you? Just take off the robes. You're following the robes. I mean, thoughts like that really would come. I mean, it's a funny story in some ways, but I can't tell you how painful these thoughts were. So, all of a sudden, Gurudev shouts out something. I couldn't hear what he said at first. It's in my direction. I'm looking around. And he's shouting something at me. And everyone's looking around. Oh, Gurudev's saying something. What's going on? And he starts walking towards me, and everyone starts to gather around. And he says what he said again. He says, you know, you're the king in your own area. Okay. He sees I don't know what he's talking about. You're the king in your own area. And I think I sense that he's touching something that I need to look at. And I start to cry again. Everyone there, I'm crying. He says, you know, there's no other Swami Asokananda on the planet. No one else can be Swami Asokananda. If I cry, no, excuse me. Do you understand that? No. He's saying to me, do you understand that? There's no one else, there's no other Swami Asokananda, and there's no one else who can be Swami Asokananda? You're the king of the Swami Asokanandas. And he hit that samskara direct. I think he hit both of them. Both the thing about jealousy and both the thing about what I did about how I reacted to the jealousy. And then I remember, he kind of switched topics, but I think it was on the same vein. He said, there were some children, did you see how these kids are playing? They sometimes get angry with each other. They don't always play well, but they forget about it right away. They don't make a big deal about it. And they play again. Learn to play like that. You know, I came out of the competitive swimming world, so I had this competitive edge already. It's not a pretty thing for a spiritual seeker to feel competitive about spiritual life, you know. But it gets in there, though. For myself, I can say it gets in there. I have to get the gold medal somehow for spiritual life. I'm the gold medal Swami. And you're right, there's a theme there about probably being insecure, and therefore I have to shine brighter than everyone else so that I can prove probably to myself that I'm worthy of all this. Are we getting time? Okay. Maybe I'll start to wrap it up. Any lesson from you're the king in your own area?
Believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself. You gotta, even with all your human qualities and weaknesses, you have to. I have this woman I mentor in Vermont. We Skype each other, and she said something to me that I really felt, and I tried to work on it since she said it. She's a doctor, and she's a great doctor. That's very kind of rural place in Vermont, like a country. One of the states is more in the outskirts. So she helps. She has very little money, but she just loves serving people. She says, I really love people. I love serving them, but I don't feel that love coming to me. I don't feel myself giving that love to me. I kind of bypass myself. And I I said, no, you can't really do that. She knew this, but I just said, no, don't do that. You gotta, wherever it's spraying from, you gotta let it pass through you first. And then it's like you first put your oxygen mask on, then put your child's mask on. First let the oxygen of love flow into you for yourself, and then let it flow toward the others. And I think that's not unusual that we try to, I don't know if we can really love in the deepest way without letting it pass through the self, the small self first, into the world. So yes, believe in yourself, yeah. So maybe I should wrap it up here. Let's see. Let's see the best of these. I like this one. This is, and Swami Ramananda and I are both at our New York center. And Gurudev was giving a talk, and we're driving him to the talk. And so I think he had a driver, someone else, Gurudev in the passenger seat, Swami Ramananda in the back seats. And I say to Gurudev, Swami Ramananda and I, we're going to start meditating more. We're going to try to start to increase our meditation. Because the meditation he gave us, Gurudev, is kind of short. We have these 3 meditations, but none of them are very long. Particularly the silent part is not that long. So, now it's time to increase that. So he doesn't say anything. I don't know if he heard me or not. I don't know if I should say anything again. Then maybe, I probably was like, at least 8 to 10 minutes later. He said, yeah, I tried that, it didn't work. I always didn't put it together that he was talking about what I had said. I said, we just want to start to increase it maybe a few hours a day of meditation. He says, yeah, you could try it. It didn't work for me. I said, what do you mean? You meditated all night in the temples and things? He says, yeah, that's not what did it for me. I said, but all the Buddhists, they talk about, building up your practice. They have these 10-hour practices for 10 days, 10 hours a day. We're meditating. But for Sadhana's part is what, an hour and a half a day. We'll never get enlightened that way. He said, no. You follow the rhythm, the schedule I gave you, you'll get enlightened. I said, no, Gurudev, I don't mean just getting a peaceful mind. I'm talking about getting enlightened. I want to be clear that I didn't want just to be peaceful. I talked about getting the whole enchilada.
The whole shebang.
Yeah, I understand. Enlightened. You mean enlightenment? I understand. He says, do you enjoy what you're doing? Oh, he said, is he changing the subject? I said, probably 80% I think I enjoy. He says, yeah, we get into the 90 percentile or so. And then stick to the schedule. Enjoy what you're doing and stick to the routine, this rhythm of life that I've given you. And you'll get enlightened, not just peaceful. Because still even now, even the other day, one of our members in New York went to Vipassana retreat, 3 weeks, 10 hours a day, And I think, oh, maybe that's it. But I always remember that it didn't work for me. I tried that, it didn't work for me. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May the light of truth overcome all darkness. Jai Shri Satguru Maharaj Ki Jai.